Okay, in this video, we are going to make this Lego. This is an updated version from several years ago. Um, these dimensions are all in inches. So you'll go into Fusion to make this. And one of the first things you want to do um, is you want to, over here in the top left where my mouse is, you can click this down arrow under Document Settings, move over and click Change Active Units and make sure this says inches and ounce mass. Mine already does. I actually have mine set as default. You don't have to set yours default if you don't want to, but make that change before we go forward. All right, so to make this, the first thing we're going to do, looking at this, is we're just going to make the basic block of it, which we can see is 1.252 long and 0.622 high. So in Fusion, I'm going to start a sketch. I'm going to put it on this plane. I'm going to use a center rectangle. And again, this was, what was that again? Let me look. 0.622 and 1.252. So 0.622 tab 1.252. Enter. So that's one way to do it. Now, I'm going to delete this actually and show you a different way. You don't have to do it that way, and you certainly don't have to delete it, but I'm going to finish the sketch and delete it down here to show you another approach for doing exactly the same thing. So I would start the sketch. I'd choose my plane. I'd choose my center rectangle, click on the center and just kind of approximately make the thing. And then I can come up to my Create menu and choose Sketch Dimension. And I can click this side here and come over and go 0.622 and hit Enter. This is what I call a two-click dimension, meaning you just click on an object, a piece of geometry, one click, move your mouse a little bit, and then click a second time to place the dimension. So, I can put this number down here or over here. I'm going to put it right about there. Okay. And that was 1.22, was it? Let me double check one more time. We keep looking at this drawing, keep coming back to the drawing. 1.252. Oh, 0.252, like that. I'd hit Enter. And so that places the thing. It's another way of dimensioning it. Either one is fine. You can even do a blended version of it if you wanted. But center diameter on the origin, 0.622 high, 0.252, not center diameter, center rectangle. Center on the origin, 0.622 one dimension, 1.252 the other way. Finish that sketch. Now, I usually try to go to my home view after I do everything, just to make sure everything looks good. What we're going to do next is we're going to extrude that. It pre-selects it for me. Just one side is a new body. Those are the things. I always check those things. My direction, my operation. And then I need to check my distance. So the distance on that, we see that in this view here, 0.378. So I type in 0.378. And I say OK. And again, I click the home button. So that's made the basic box. Now, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to create one of these studs here. A couple of things to pay attention to. The diameter of the stud is listed here, 0.197. And then it's located by its center, 0.154 over from this corner and 0.154 down from this. We're going to create that top left stud. We're also going to put a tiny little fillet on it. I don't know if you can tell that too well by looking at this, but there's a slight curvature right around the top edges of this. And that curvature, does it tell you in here the size of? It doesn't. So this drawing is deficient in that it doesn't tell you the size of those fillets, but it's 0.2 millimeters, I believe it is. That'll be fine if you do 0.2 millimeters, as long as it's something fairly small. So let's start off. So what we're going to do now is we're going to make a sketch. This time we're going to choose the top surface of the block I've made as the surface for that sketch. We're going to do a center diameter circle. Again, if you don't have that, you can click the down arrow and go to circle and come over to center diameter circle. That's true of anything I pull off the create menu. I have it populated with these quick access items, but all items are always available by clicking this down arrow and coming down here and find it. Anyway, so I got my center diameter circle started. I'm going to click approximately where it belongs. One click to place the center. then move over and a second click to place the perimeter. Now, that's not the right size, not in the right place. It's just approximate. That's why it's blue. And of course, I will take points off if I go into anything you turn in that has a blue in the sketch. You have to fully define it. So the first part of defining it is we're going to say what diameter it is right here. And I just clicked the edge and then came over and clicked again, a 2-click dimension. Make this thing and then move over, make it this big. 1 click, 2 click, type in the number. So let's see what number we want, 0.197 right there. That's a diameter. That symbol right there where my mouse is bouncing up and down, that is the diameter symbol. So anytime you see a circle on a drawing and there's an arrow pointing to the edge of it and it has that symbol, that's the diameter of that circle. So 0.197. So here I'm going to put in 0.197 and hit enter. Now, you'll notice it's still blue. And the reason it's still blue is it could literally be anywhere on this surface. So we have to locate it. Now, the first way we're going to locate it, if you look back at this drawing, is it's 0.154 from the edge to its center. This is a different kind of way of doing a dimension. I still have my dimension tool on. This is what I call a 3-click dimension. You're not saying how big a thing is. You're saying how far it is from one thing to another. So your first click will be on this line. Now, as you move over, you'll notice it's trying to do a 2-click dimension. But if I keep moving and I click on a second thing, now when I move, it gives me the dimension between the two items. So this is a 3-click dimension, the distance between two things. So you choose your first item. You move over, you click your second item. Then your third click is where you want your number to sit. So I'm going to click my number, put it right there. So that was 3 clicks. Remember the number is 0.154. I recall that. I'm going to hit enter. So 3 clicks, type in your number, hit enter to put the distance between two items. 2 clicks, 1 click on the item and another click where you want to put your number to just say how large an item is. So 2-click dimensions and 3-click dimensions. Let's do another 3-click dimension from the top edge. Then notice it's trying to do a 2-click dimension, but if I click a second time on another object, now I'm going to pull over this way and I can say the distance between the two objects, and that's also 0.154. I'm just going to go back and double check that I'm remembering those numbers correctly. Yeah, 0.154 over and 0.154 down. Now, a thing you'll notice is nothing is blue anymore because there's no question about the size or the location of that stud. So I click Finish Sketch, or that circle. It's not a stud yet because I do need to extrude it. So now I'm going to do Extrude. I'm going to choose the interior of that. I'm going to type in how far I want it to extrude. And the dimension is right here. It's 0.067. That's how far it comes up from where I drew the base. So 0.067. And it moves it upward like that. If you type in negative 0.067, it would try to push it down there. Now, very important point. Every time you do an extrusion, you should always check the operation here. Make sure this says join. Sometimes it'll default to new body, which is incorrect. We definitely want join. Join is what we're after. So we say okay on that. Next, we want to put a slight fillet on that edge right around there. So we go to the modify menu. There's the fillet. If you don't see it there, you can click the down arrow and it's there. Either way of choosing it is fine. I'm going to choose it that way since I'm there now. So this launches the fillet tool. I click just this edge and then I type in the dimension, which I want to be 0.2 millimeters. I'm not going to do inches here. 0.2 and you type in mm. If you did 0.2 inches, it would be far too big. It would cause a problem. So in this case, if my default dimensions are inches, I can always type in different units, right? My default units are inches, but if I type in millimeters, I type in mm, it will make this one be in millimeters, defined in millimeters. And I say, okay. Now, an interesting thing, if you were to go back and edit this feature, and you look right here, oh, actually it does keep it as in millimeters. I thought it would redefine it in inches for you. It does do that with most dimensions, but for some reason it didn't do that here. Anyway, 0.2 millimeters. So now I've got one stud all fully defined in the right place. What I'm going to do next is under the Create menu, and this is a feature. You'll notice that, let me point this out. I have a sketch, and I did a feature. I have a sketch, and then I did a feature building off of that sketch. But then next, I just did a feature without a preceding sketch. Um, every sketch should be followed by a feature in most cases, really in all cases for this class. But not every feature has to be followed by a sketch. Sometimes you can take a feature and do another feature atop it. We're going to do yet a third feature that just builds off existing features. Under the Create menu, if you come down, they have what's called pattern. Now, pattern comes in two kinds, circular and rectangular. We're going to make a rectangular pattern of these studs. So I'm going to choose rectangular pattern. Now, this is one of the things about Fusion I don't understand, but it always defaults to the objects being bodies for patterns. Please change that to features. I never pattern bodies. I always pattern features. Let's change that to features. Okay. Then it wants you to select the objects. So over here in the dialog box, make sure it's a rectangular pattern of features, and you want to select the objects. The way I select the objects and the way I suggest you do is come down to your timeline, because when you hover over something, it will actually highlight it in the model. So I want to pattern the extrusion and the fillet that I did on it. So click both of those. It should say 2 selected here. If you make a mistake, you can click a second time and it deselects it. Or another option is you can come up and just click the X here and start over with select the things again. So if you make an error, you click the wrong things, you don't have to start all over. You can just do those, click again, and it toggles them on and off. Now that we've got those 2 items selected, we have to tell it, well, which directions do you want this rectangular pattern to be in? So it asks for axes. We're going to select, we choose this long edge here. We could choose this long edge or this long edge or even the one on the back. Anything sort of going in that direction would work, but this is the one we're going to click, okay? And now the dialog box changes, and it changes in a couple of important ways. The first thing is it changes how many times you want to pattern this in along that axis that you selected. And if you look at the drawing, we actually see that there are 1, 2, 3, 4 here. So we're going to change this from 3 to 4. Okay, but then the next thing here is we have 2 options up here under distribution. You actually have 2 options. You can tell it how far all 4 of them add up to, what's called the extent, or you can change it for how far between each one, the spacing. Spacing is between 2 adjacent ones. Extent is from the beginning to the end one. Okay, so let's look at here in our drawing and see which one they gave us. They gave us the extent. They did not give us the spacing there. The extent from the first one to the last one is 0.945. So over here, let's make sure this still says extent and type in 0.945. And now you can see it gives us a preview of that direction at 0.945 spacing of 4 items. Now, the other direction, if we look at it, the other direction, which will be perpendicular because it's a rectangular pattern, that one has a spacing of 0.315 and an extent of 0.315. So this one, we can leave the default as extent and type in 0.315. Now, currently, it defaults to doing 3 of them. We only want 2 of them in that direction. So it's 4 in one direction with an extent of 0.945 and 2 in the other direction with an extent of 0.315. And that looks right. And you can see it has both the extrusion and the fillet have been patterned here. So this is awesome. We're going to click OK, and it gives us all those buttons on top. So once again, that's under the Create menu. Under pattern, it's rectangular pattern. That's how you started that. That's how you make that work. And then you just go into your dialog box and select all the right things. All right. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to roll this item over like this so I can see the underside. Because if you look at our drawing right here, it's kind of easy to see the underside, that it's kind of hollowed out inside of there. It doesn't actually say right here how far to hollow it out. But it kind of suggests here that when you hollow it out, you want to leave a wall around that's 0.059 in size. So we're going to do something we haven't done before. We're going to go over here to modify, and we're going to choose something called shell. I don't use shell a lot. In fact, I don't think I ever make it mandatory on anything but this part. But we're going to choose shell. We're going to click the underside of this part. And then we're going to change this to 0.059. It gives us a preview. And you see what it's done is it's kind of hollowed out from that face the whole object. So the distance from the inside of this hollow you're making to the exterior in every single direction, up and down, left and right, up inside of those little studs, is always going to be 0.059. It just leaves it basically makes the whole thing have a wall, makes it a shell that is 0.059 thick. So a fairly straightforward, pretty powerful tool for getting everything to be the same thickness all the way around. This is very common in plastic parts. Anyway, say okay, and you've got that one done. Fairly straightforward. All right. Now, you'll notice in our timeline that we've done 1, 2, 3, 4 features without a single sketch. But now we're going to have to make another sketch. What we're going to do now, if you look at this, and by the way, you see those little circles right there, those represent the holes that you see in the underside here, these holes. They go up inside of those studs. That's why those are there. Anyway, what we're going to do next is we're going to create these little cylinders that stand out from the underside of the interior. We created a flat surface in here by doing the shell. We're going to sketch on that surface a circle that's going to come out. Now, about this circle, a couple of key points I want to make. One is we're going to make the outer circle first, and then we're going to put the inner circle second. Secondly, that outer circle is its center is halfway between the center of this little circle, this indent here, and the center of that circle there. So I'm going to show you a little trick for finding the center of basically a rectangle, a rectangular pattern, or rectangular geometry of any kind right now. So we're going to start off, we're going to make a sketch on this surface. And what we're going to do is we're going to go up here and create a line. Now this line, I'm going to change the type of this line. It's the first time we've done this. When you open a sketch tool up of any kind, there's always a sketch palette over here. And usually I ignore it and just make my sketch. But this time we're going to go in and we're going to change this to the line type to type construction. For now, don't worry too much about what a construction line is, but it is the proper line type for what we're about to do. Okay, so create a line of type construction. We'll move our cursor over until it snaps to the center of this little indentation here. And you'll know that because you get that little blue circle there. In fact, let me zoom in. So see the little blue circle that pops up when I get inside of there, right on the center. So I'm going to click once there. I'm going to move down and find the same point on here and click a second time. Now, if I were to pull away, it would try to make another line. I don't need that. So I need to hit escape to turn off the line tool. So what I've done now is I made a line of type construction from there to there. I don't need any more of my lines to be type construction, so I'm going to toggle this back. So my next lines are not type construction. Okay, so now what I want to do is make a center diameter. Oh, by the way, before you click on this center diameter circle, be sure you turn off construction. You do not want that highlighted like that. You want it non-highlighted like that. If you have it non-highlighted, then when you go to make your center diameter circle, it'll be a real circle, not a, construction type circle. As usual, we want to place the center of this circle. Now, and it might be a little hard to see, but when I move my cursor onto this line, I get a little blue X. If I move along the line, it changes from a blue X and a triangle, an equilateral triangle. That equilateral triangle is forcing a constraint. If I click right now, it will force a constraint on the center of this circle that it lies at the midpoint. If you go up here to constraints and you hover over that one, it tells you that is the symbol for a midpoint. So I'm going to come down on this line until I see that. That will force the center of the circle to be on the midpoint of that line, which will be in the center of that square of little indents there. So I'm going to click once there. I'm going to pull away a little bit, not too far. If you go too far, we run into some things start happening here that I don't want to run into just yet. So I'm not going to go that far. I'm just going to go maybe about this size, about 0.15 or so, and click a second time and hit escape now to turn off my circle tool. Okay, so I've made exactly one circle whose center is on the midpoint of this. It's blue because I haven't defined it in any other way. So it really doesn't know how big to be. Now, if you go and you look at the drawing right now, you'll notice that I never say anywhere how big this outer circle should be. Instead, what's happened here, let me double click this so I can I do that? Let me open Google Docs. Let me do that. The reason I'm doing this is I want to zoom in on it. And it doesn't allow you to zoom in on it with that kind of view. There we go. Come on. That's not good. All right, Google Docs don't work. All right, well, let me go. Trying to remember the best way to look at this. Oh, maybe I'll just zoom in like this. There we go. All right. What you will notice that this says right here, this is tangent to the projection of the stud directly above it. What this means is that the outside of this circle actually reaches the edge of the stud, this circle here, it reaches the edge of this stud here. But the problem is see, that stud isn't on the same plane that I'm sketching. So that geometry is not automatically available to me to make this circle touch that stud. By the way, practically speaking, the reason we do this is with a Lego, you're going to place it on top of another Lego, and you want the edge of this cylinder to pinch the stud that it's sticking onto against the top edge and side edge and the edge of this, the 3 points. You want that stud to hit right there. So that's why this needs to be so that the edge just touches the stud that would press into it. So here's how we do that. We're going to go into our model here, and we're actually going to, and this is unusual, I usually don't change my view when I'm sketching, but I'm going to go up to my view cube, I'm going to click, and I'm going to drag until I can see the other side of this Lego here, the other side of this part. And if you notice, you can still see the sketch there in blue kind of hovering there. So you'll know that you're in the right place if you see that circle kind of underneath there, not on the same plane as this. Now, what we want to do is we want to take that bit of geometry, that edge of that stud there, that surface or that edge there, and we want to project it onto the sketch we're doing. So the way you do that is you go to Create, Project Include, Project. And now you'll select that edge and say OK. And something new has happened in our sketch. I don't know if you can see it down there. But you see that little purple circle kind of faintly visible right there? That took this edge and projected it onto the sketch plane. It made it part of our sketch. And this is good because it's going to allow us now in our sketch to access that geometry. What I'm going to do next is I'm going to try to get back to the view directly on my sketch. I'm going to click up here in the view cube. I'm going to roll it back over like this. And then look at the view cube. I see its bottom that I want to look at. So if I move my cursor till it hits the center of that word, bottom, up here in the top right, you see where my cursor is, I'm going to click that. And that's going to make me straight on again with my sketch. So I feel more comfortable that my sketch is making sense. So here's all I want to do now. I want to make the edge of this circle just touch the edge of that circle. That's called tangent. It's one of my constraints. So up here under my constraints menu, and you might have to click the down arrow and come down and find it here, or it might already be in your quick access, but you want to move until you find the one that says tangent. Choose tangent, then you want to select this circle and that circle. And boom, notice what it does. It makes this circle just touch that circle at a single point, a tangent point. And that ends up fully defining this circle with no dimensions. I'm going to hit escape a few times to turn off that tool because I'm done with that tool. But you'll notice if you click over here, you click over here, wherever, as long as you're not selecting that circle, everything is black. This circle, its location and its diameter have been fully defined by being midpoint on this guy here and tangent to this guy here. That's fully defined, that circle. And I have to tell you that this is superior to trying to define it with dimensions. So we've got that. Now, we could leave the sketch there and just extrude this and then come back and create the hole in the center. But honestly, while I'm in this sketch, there's an easy way to make the inner circle be offset by 1 millimeter from the circle around it. So what we're going to do next is I'm going to go to the Modify menu. And in there's something called Offset. It wants you to select a curve. We're going to select this one. It's going to ask you how far to set it, offset it. And remember, we want it to be 1 millimeter. You have to type that in. But you'll notice it's offsetting it the wrong direction. The preview is the red one. We want it to go inside. So if you click flip here, that'll make it go inside. Another option is to actually just make this be negative 1 millimeter. It also makes it go inside. Either one works. When you do flip, it really just adds, it toggles the sign next to the offset, outside versus inside. We want inside. So that should say negative 1 millimeter. When you're done there, it should preview going inward from the circle we selected by that. Say OK. Now we can finish that sketch. It is fully defined. You'll notice it did end up putting a dimension in here. I just moved it over. You don't have to move it. I'm just moving it so it's easy to see. And here it did the thing that I expected before. It changed 1 millimeter to the equivalent inches because inches are my default unit. If you hover over it, it does show you that you actually typed in 1 millimeter. If you double click it, it'll go back to showing that. I'm going to escape. But yeah, so 0.039. Anyway, I'm going to finish that sketch. So now, if I drag this around a little bit, you can see that sketch is lying in there. What we want that profile right there to do is extrude up to this front edge here. We want it to come up just even with that. So the way we'll do that is we'll do an extrude. We'll select that profile. And then here under extent type, instead of doing a distance where I type in a number, I'm going to choose to object and select this face. And it gives you a preview. It extrudes it from where it is to this face. So it doesn't matter how tall you make this Lego be, that surface will always come up even with this surface if you chose extent type to object and you select this object. Also check that your operation says join, always important that it's join, and say OK. So now we've got that. Now, the next thing I want to show you, and again, it's not really explicitly stated here, but there is a little fillet both inside and outside of this. It's to make it so that that edge is soft enough that it fits over your other Lego if you put the two together. So if you go into here, we're going to go to, under our Modify menu, we're going to go to chamfer, or if you have it already here in your quick access, choose chamfer. Wait, chamfer? No, that's not what I want. I want fillet. Oh, fillet. Did it say chamfer? No, it should say fillet. I apologize. I said chamfer. If you go to modify, you do not want chamfer. You want fillet. Make sure you've chosen fillet. Okay. And then you can actually click this face, and that will have it fillet both this outer edge and the inner edge. So you can do that. And then again, that's 0.2 millimeters. You just type in 0.2 mm, and it does that. Notice it does both the inside and outside. Now, I want to show you something else. I'm going to actually click cancel. You could have gone in with fillet and clicked this edge and then that edge, and then type in 0.2 millimeters. And it's the same thing. So you can either click the face and it does all edges attached to that face, or you can click each edge and choose the edges. Either one works, 0.2 millimeter, say OK. So now you've got that rounded off there. Last thing we're going to do is one more pattern. We're going to create another rectangular pattern. Okay, rectangular pattern. It went back to doing features, which is nice. I always want it to be features there. The objects, I'm going to choose select. And in my timeline down here, I want to choose that extrusion and the fillet that goes with it. Okay, so both of those will be patterned. And then axis, I can select anything that runs in this direction. I want to pattern it this way here. Either that edge or that edge or this edge down here or this any of those edges. I'm just going to choose this one right here. Any of those edges can be chosen as the axis I want to pattern it along. All right. We do want 3 of these, so that number is right. If you look at the drawing, there are 3 of them. And then it tells us the extent is 0.630. From the first one to the last one is 0.630. So extent is selected here, and this number here needs to be 0.630. The other direction, we only want one of these. So let's change that to just being 1. We only need one of those going perpendicular to this. Your first one you get is along the axis you select. The axis 2 is always perpendicular to that. And then perpendicular to that axis, we only need 1. Unlike the studs on top, where we needed 2 going in that direction, this one we only need 1. And you don't need to give it a distance because you're not actually you're only doing 1 row, so you don't need to tell it how far between rows or whatever. Say okay. Give it a moment. It thinks. We are done with this Lego. It looks great. So of course you want to click save. You want to make sure with your down arrow here that you're saving in the right place. Yours is very different than mine. This I think should all be in classwork. It should say classwork right here. And that's all it should be. There shouldn't be any others. You've chosen classwork over here. Call it 2x4 LEGO brick. Or you could call it a Lego 2x4 brick, whatever. Even if you just call it Lego, it's going to be good enough for me. And click save. I'm not going to click save because I've done this 100 times, so I'm just going to click cancel. But be sure you do save that before you go any further. That's all for now. Good luck. That's all.